Hello, welcome to Clarity Design. We are going to look at lights and how we can add lights. This is something you haven't had to worry about before in your scenes because Maya has a default light set built in. We're going to be jumping in and out of rendered images, but we're going to have a look at different views as well. And we're also going to be using the attribute editor quite a lot, so it's worth having that open. You can see I've got a little scene set up already with just some basic shapes. I've added an anisotropic to this one, a blend to that one, and I've switched on ray tracing inside this blend, so it's got some reflections on it. Just inside that blend, there we go, find the right place. So in case you haven't done it before, there's ray trace options, you switch it on there, and also inside the options for your rendering Maya software you can also switch on the ray trace field there. That will help later on as well if you start turning on shadows and such like as well. As soon as we start rendering, we can just have a quick render, because at the moment, let's just switch our view so that we can see the resolution gate, check what's in our image, there we go. Yeah, as soon as you click render, Maya is using the light set that's set up inside Maya when you first come in, so it's pretending that you've added some lights into your scene. It's making a guess at some basic lighting, including some shadows. As soon as you start looking at lights for real and adding your own, then it switches all of those off. And if you want to see the effect of lights within your scene whilst you're working on it, you can have a rough view by pressing 7, and that gives you a true view of the lights that we've added into our scene, which at the moment is none. So let's create a light. So create lights, and we'll go for the top one, and then we'll work our way through a little bit. We won't go into too much detail with all of them, I'll let you play around with it. So as soon as I've added this light, you can see exactly what it's done. It started showing that illumination with 7 pressed. So you can see as I bring this forward, you can see that this ambient light, it does matter where I'm positioning it. And let's just do a quick render of that. I've got it set on quite a low resolution at the moment so that it renders them out quickly. You can see nice reflections, very soft light. Ambient light is exactly what it says it is. It's there to produce a kind of a base ambience that might be from bounced light that's maybe coming from outside or somewhere else, and it gives you kind of an indistinct light source. So here we've got the colour. So like I said, ambient light, if you go to the attribute editor, inside ambient light shape 1, you've got your area that you're going to be mucking about with today. So you've got ambient light here. You can change the colour a little bit so we can warm it up the scene. Obviously, I would say that little is more when it comes to lights, so try not to make lighting too strong. And we're going to be adding more lights, but for now we might want to just turn up that intensity because it's the only light in our scene. Shadow colour is at the moment black. We could maybe make that a slightly lighter shade. And then we've got this tick box here saying use ray trace shadows. Well, let's just render that one more time, because you will have probably failed to notice that the shadows that were there before have now been switched off. So this is quite an unrealistic lighting set, and everything looks quite flat. You know, it doesn't look very three-dimensional. One of the theories that you should be working with is that, you know, whenever you're using lights, 3 lights is kind of a minimum for lighting an object. A directional light of some kind, which is lighting the object itself, an ambient light, which is giving kind of the soft glow, and maybe a fill light, one that's going to kind of add an extra edge of highlight to some of your objects to make them seem more three-dimensional. If you remember, 3 lights is a good starting point for lighting. Then it helps you get started. So let's just switch on ray trace shadows, and you'll see exactly what I mean. So we've got shadow rays 1, ray depth limit 3. That's fine for this simple scene. And I'll just refresh this, and you'll see that okay. So having this single light in the scene is going to cause me problems as soon as I start getting anything a little bit more complex happening, because I've now got these really solid black shadows happening, and it's not very nice at all to look at. So we can start adding another light. I'll get to the point of having 3 lights, and then I'll have a play around with them a little bit. In fact, actually what I'll do is I'll change this ambient light first of all, so that you can see the effect of other kinds of lights. So to do that, I can just scroll back to the top, and I can change this type light. I can just change it to a different kind of light. So we've got an area light here. You can see this is much more direct, almost like the light's coming through a window. I've kept all of the other properties exactly the same. Let's have a look what that looks like on the render, the shadows. Okay, so actually this area light is having a much more localized effect than the ambient light did, and you can see that actually it's a more complex light. There's some other things going on here. This decay rate is very interesting. At the moment, if I scroll out, if I move this out and in, you can see that actually this is just staying the same strength no matter how far away it gets. Now if I switch decay on, quadratic decay is similar to real life decay. It looks like the light's just been switched off, but in fact the light just has to be so close to be able to see the effect of the light. And this is much more like real life, that as you get further away, light gets disrupted and it gets slightly more dull. Zoom in again. So if I want to get that to an equivalent sort of light that is in when I've got quadratic switched off, I want that to be about 100. And that's going to give me a similar sort of light. So that's 100 with quadratic. Let's switch no decay. Way too much. Put that back to 1. It's virtually the same. So it's about the same sort of thing, a little bit more. But yeah, about 100. And then if you've got that and you've got quadratic on, it means that if you move this light further away, you've got a bit more control about how it's illuminating the objects. I'm just going to rotate that a little bit. Oh, here's a little trick for you. If you've got a light selected, if you go to panels and look through selected, you can actually see through the light itself, and then when you position it using Alt and the left key, you can actually focus your light a little bit more easily, and that's really useful if you're looking through a spotlight, which we'll have a look at in a minute. So there's an area light. So let's have a look at a directional light. Oh, I should have said you can switch, obviously you've got shadows again, you can switch these on, depth match shadows. Let's just have a quick look at the quality here. So it gets more and more advanced as you start editing some of these options here. So switch on ray trace shadows as well, and there we've got kind of this needs more refinement, but you get the general idea. So this more advanced light obviously has depth match shadows, the other one didn't, so we can use those instead of ray trace shadows, and that's a little bit nicer. So yeah, let's move on to the next light. So I won't go through all the lights, but the next one's quite important, a directional light. Okay, now you can see immediately I need to put that back to 1 because we've lost our ability to add decay rate, so that goes back to 1. Now the interesting thing about directional lights is it doesn't matter where you put them. It's like they are parallel beams of light coming in from somewhere, and they're parallel. It really doesn't matter where it is. If the object is behind or in front, it makes absolutely no difference where this light is positioned, because the parallel light is coming in from the side. So you can see there we've got this lovely parallel light coming in. It's good for lighting things that maybe the light source is a long way away, that sort of thing. So you can have a play around with that. I won't go into any more detail there. A point light. Now point lights I find very useful, and one of the reasons why I find a point light useful, oh I've lost it, is that you can do this with any light, but you can actually remove light from a scene by adding a negative value here, and I quite like adding shadow. So I'll just leave that point light there for a second. Actually I'll put it here for a second, and I'm going to create another light at this point in time. So let's create an ambient light. So we've got that ambience that we had to begin with, and again remember that's a simple light, and I'm just going to reduce, actually no, I'll leave it where it is. Let's have a look. So quite bright at the moment. You can see this struggling with these shadows at the moment coming from the point light at the front. We can sort that out, but I won't worry about it too much. And then down here, if I add this a -1, so -1, not 10, -1. Okay, so what that's doing is it's let's just add some decay on there, and then make that -50. Okay, so what that's actually doing is it's actually reducing the amount of light in the scene. It's actually removing light from the scene. So whereas this is adding an ambient light, this is now removing it. And the beauty of this is that you can actually make shadows deeper. So if you wanted to make a darker shadow or a darker place, maybe you've got a candle light and you want it to be a bit more spooky than it is, you can actually reduce the amount of light in a scene. So we can add light to a scene, we can reduce light for a scene. Point lights are really useful for things like candle light and small emissions of lights. You have got light effects on here, which means that you can add a little light glow to it, meaning that you can see it from the camera. So if this was in the camera scene, you could actually set it up so that you can have a look at that and see it. Yeah, let's just, I'm just going to get rid of that now. So I've just got the ambient light left, so this ambient light over here, and we'll leave that as it is for now. I'm going to create another light inside here. I'm going to create a spotlight. Now this is one that is used a lot. It's the one that is most similar to the kind of light that you get in a theatre. So just to position this, I'm just going to jump into the view of it again. So I'm going to go to Panels, Look Through Selected with the light selected, and I'm just going to set this up to light the object from over a different direction to the ambient light. So this is kind of my object light. I'm thinking about how I'm lighting my objects now. And I can change, obviously, down here the cone angle, penumbra. You kind of work out what this means as you play around with it. But you can kind of see an illustration here as well of this kind of rough scene here. So I want that to encompass all of my objects, and a little bit more. Let's just add a very slight blue to this just for fun. So I make it just a little bit blue, and that'll have fun. Now I'll go back to my camera view, perspective camera, and let's render that. You can see that's looking quite nice inside there. Let's see what it looks like rendered. Okay, so my shadows are getting more interesting now, and I can actually see that these objects are looking a little bit more 3D. This is a pretty nasty effect I've got going down here with this edge. Let's see if we can just switch on the use of depth map shadows and see if that improves the renderer tool. Well, it does and doesn't, so I would have to keep playing around with this to get this right, so that I'm happy with it. But at the moment I will just leave it as it is, I think. Right, so I just needed, like I said at the beginning, you want to have 3 lights. You can see this lovely light here. The ambient light is giving us kind of a soft light, and I want something to lift the back edge here. Okay, so there's just one light that we haven't looked at yet, which is the volume light. Now the volume light allows you to create a shape which light can shine outwards from, or shine inwards from. So you can see you can get different kinds of shapes here, and you can get it to be either emitting outwards, or you can reverse that emitting so it actually emits inwards from itself. So you can see the light direction here, you can actually send that inwards, which means that it will be lighting things that are inside the volume instead of outside the volume. So you can actually put this around spheres and stuff and make it look like they're glowing or they're extra bright and such like. It's not particularly useful on a day-to-day basis. The more useful one, in this case we've got 2 here, is I probably want to put one more point light in. So I'm going to create lights, I'm going to put point light in, and I'm going to move that to the back edge here. What I'm looking to do is, let's just put some decay on that, and we'll put that up to 50. What we're looking to do is to generate a highlight edge on some of our objects. There we go, so I'm moving that forward, so I'm just picking up the edge of this object as well. I'm trying to increase the indication that the objects are 3-dimensional. So this is called a fill light. So I've got my ambient light, which is slightly yellow, I've got my fill light, which is white, and I've got my lovely spotlight, which is doing the main part of the illumination on the objects. This may be a little bit too bright from where it is at the moment. I might just move it back a little bit. Let's give that a render and see how our scene is looking. Okay, so that you can see that point light at the moment is really bright on here, so because it's so close to the surface, and it's also quite bright on here. So there is a way to sort that out called light linking, but I'll cover that in an extra tutorial. But if you wanted to search it up for yourself, light linking is what you'd want to do. At the moment I'm just going to try and just sort that out by switching off decay and turning this down to, again, about 0.5. Oh, not 5, 0.5, if I can type correctly. Okay, so it's not nearly as nice in terms of on the shapes of the objects themselves, but it's a nicer effect because the wall is not being whited out at this point in time. So I'm just playing around with that. So you can see I've got some nice objects here. This one with the lovely reflections going on, the Blinn, the Antistropic, you can see how that's behaving, and how it behaves on the surface of a Lambert as well. Very simple example, but hopefully that gives you a good idea as to how to start going about lighting your scene. All the best.